Did you feel the ground shake recently? It was a day like any other when the Earth decided to remind us of its unpredictable power. Without warning, the ground beneath us began to tremble, jolting us out of our daily routines. The source? An earthquake, striking at the heart of White House Station, New Jersey. The tremors were not confined to the Garden State alone. The quake's reach extended far and wide. Its palpable shudder felt across several states. The earth spoke in a language of vibrations, and its message was loud and clear, leaving an indelible mark on those who experienced it. Imagine sipping your morning coffee when your hand starts to quiver, not from caffeine, but from the seismic tremors. Picture a teacher mid-sentence, the chalk slipping from their grasp as the blackboard vibrates. Envision the surprise of a dog walker as the leash shakes in their hand, their canine companion equally bewildered. This was the reality for many that morning. The immediate aftermath of the earthquake was a flurry of activity. Airports were brought to a standstill, ground stops were implemented as a safety measure. Transit systems also felt the impact, suspensions put in place as officials scrambled to assess the situation. The earthquake was an uninvited guest, disrupting our lives and shaking our sense of security, but it was also a reminder of the immense power of nature, of our vulnerability, and of our resilience in the face of adversity. The ground may have stopped shaking, but the echoes of the quake's arrival reverberate. They serve as a stark reminder of the unexpected jolt that turned an ordinary day into an unforgettable one. And so, in an instant, the world as we knew it was shaking. Once the earth stopped shaking, the aftermath began. A surreal silence filled the air, replacing the terrifying rumble that had only moments ago echoed throughout the East Coast. Buildings, once thought to be unshakable, had felt the tremors, but thankfully, reports started coming in that no major damage had occurred, a testament to our architectural advancements and seismic design principles. Emergency operations centers, the nerve centers during such events, sprung into action. These are the places where chaos is transformed into order, where uncertainty is replaced by information. They were activated across several states, ready to coordinate efforts, provide aid, and keep the public informed. And speaking of the public, they had a crucial role to play too. As the trembling subsided, people were urged not to flood the 911 emergency lines unless they were facing immediate danger. This might seem like a small thing, but in times of crisis, it's vital. Emergency lines need to stay open for those in dire need of help, those who might be trapped or injured. By showing restraint, the public becomes an important part of the crisis response, ensuring that help reaches where it's most needed. The response to this earthquake was a dance of sorts, a choreographed performance of many parts working in harmony. The emergency centers, the public, the first responders, all played their parts to perfection. As a result, despite the initial fear and confusion, the aftermath was handled in a controlled and efficient manner. But the aftermath is more than just the immediate response. It's an ongoing process, a time of introspection and learning. Even as the ground beneath our feet returned to its steady state, the echoes of the quake continued to reverberate. The impact of the earthquake, both physical and psychological, was only just beginning to be felt. Even though the shaking had stopped, the impact of the earthquake was just beginning to be felt. The earthquake's impact was more than just physical. Indeed, the repercussions of an earthquake extend far beyond the shaking of buildings and the rumbling of the ground. For the people who experience it, the psychological impact can be just as profound. The tremors that ripple through the earth are mirrored by waves of fear and anxiety that ripple through minds. The sudden realization that the solid ground beneath our feet isn't as stable as we thought can be a jarring shake to our sense of security. The aftermath of an earthquake can be a time of uncertainty and stress, but it can also be a time of unity and resilience. In the face of adversity, communities come together, neighbors check on each other, strangers lend helping hands, and individuals discover strengths they didn't know they had. The shared experience of the earthquake brings people together in a way that is both beautiful and powerful. The earthquake also prompts a reassessment and reevaluation at a systemic level. Policymakers, city planners, and emergency response teams all take a hard look at what worked, what didn't, and where improvements can be made. Emergency operations centers are activated, new procedures are implemented, and existing policies are updated. The lessons learned from each earthquake shape the response to the next one, making communities more prepared and resilient. The earthquake's impact is not only felt immediately but also long after the ground has stopped shaking. It leaves an indelible print on the landscape and the people who live there. It reminds us of our vulnerability but also our strength. It forces us to face our fears but also brings us together. It challenges our systems but also drives us to improve them. From physical to psychological, the impact of the earthquake was far-reaching. As we move forward, we carry these lessons with us, using them to build a future that is stronger, safer, and more resilient. Earthquakes on the East Coast are not as common as you might think. As we delve into the history of earthquakes in this region, you'll discover that they are indeed a rarity, yet not entirely absent from the geological narrative of the East Coast. Let's take a journey back to the year 2011 to Central Virginia. It was here that an earthquake of a significant magnitude struck, leaving the residents and the scientific community rather surprised. This seismic event was not only felt across several states but also caused notable damage to the Washington Monument and the National Cathedral, bringing into sharp focus the reality of earthquakes in this region. Fast forward to 2017 and we find ourselves in Little Creek, Delaware. While this earthquake was not as destructive as the one in Virginia, it was significant in its own right. With a magnitude that was felt across several states, it served as a stark reminder that the East Coast is not entirely immune to the tremors of the earth. More recently, in 2023, another earthquake made headlines in Buffalo, New York. This was a seismic event that was felt across a wide area, once again demonstrating the East Coast's susceptibility to earthquakes. As we look back on these events, a pattern begins to emerge. Despite the rarity of earthquakes on the East Coast, when they do occur, they tend to be felt across a wide geographic area. These earthquakes, while not as frequent or as destructive as those on the West Coast, still hold a significant place in the geological history of the region. The question then arises, why are earthquakes on the East Coast so rare? The answer lies in the tectonic activity beneath our feet. The East Coast of the United States is located in the middle of the North American plate, far from the tectonic boundaries where earthquakes are more frequent. Yet, as we've seen, this doesn't mean earthquakes are impossible, only that they are less common. Scientists continue to study these seismic events, their causes, their patterns, and their potential impact. Each earthquake provides valuable data, contributing to our growing understanding of the geological forces at work beneath the East Coast. While rare, these seismic events remind us of the power of nature. They serve as a reminder that even in areas considered geologically stable, the Earth's crust is constantly in motion, shaped by forces that, while usually silent, can sometimes make themselves heard in the most dramatic of ways. But what causes these earth-shattering events? In the simplest terms, earthquakes are caused by the sudden release of energy in the Earth's crust, creating seismic waves that shake the ground. These seismic waves are the result of the constant motion of tectonic plates, the massive, irregularly shaped slabs of solid rock that make up the Earth's surface. Imagine the Earth as a giant jigsaw puzzle, with the tectonic plates as the pieces. These pieces are constantly moving, albeit at a pace slower than a snail's pace. They slide past each other, pull apart, or collide. Most of the time, these movements are smooth and unnoticeable. However, sometimes the plates get stuck at their edges due to friction. When the stress on the edge overcomes the friction, there is an earthquake, as the energy is released in the form of seismic waves. Now, you might ask, how do we measure the strength of an earthquake? Enter the Richter scale. Developed in the early 20th century by Charles F. Richter, this logarithmic scale quantifies the energy released by an earthquake. The recent earthquake that shook the east coast of the United States had a magnitude of 4.8 on the Richter scale. For perspective, an earthquake with a magnitude of 3 or lower is usually not felt, but can be recorded. Magnitudes of 4 to 4.9 are noticeable and can shake buildings, but significant damage is unlikely. When we move into the range of 5 to 5.9, We're talking about moderate earthquakes that can cause damage to buildings and other structures. So, a 4.8 magnitude earthquake, like the one that recently occurred, is somewhere between noticeable shaking and potential damage to buildings. While it might not sound like much, the experience can be quite unnerving, especially in regions where earthquakes are not a common occurrence. To give you a bit more context, the devastating earthquake that hit San Francisco in 1906 is estimated to have had a magnitude of 7.9. The catastrophic earthquake in Haiti in 2010, that was a 7.0. So while a 4.8 magnitude quake is considerably less powerful, it's still significant. It's enough to halt airports, suspend transit, and cause a general sense of alarm. In the grand scheme of things, a 4.8 might seem minor, but as we've seen, the impact can be significant. So, how do we prepare for future earthquakes? That's a question that has been haunting mankind ever since the first tremor was felt beneath our feet. The answer, while complex, boils down to two key factors: readiness and resilience. Let's start with readiness. The first step in earthquake preparedness is having an emergency plan. This should include knowing where to go and what to do when an earthquake strikes. Remember, in the event of a tremor, the safest place is often under a sturdy piece of furniture to protect from falling debris. It's also crucial to know the location of your nearest safe spot, away from windows or items that could shatter. A vital part of any emergency plan is an emergency kit. This should include essentials such as water, food, medications, a flashlight, batteries, and a first aid kit. Remember, in the aftermath of an earthquake, you may need to be self-sufficient for several days while help arrives. But readiness isn't just about personal safety. It's also about infrastructure. That's where building codes come into play. These codes, which regulate how buildings are constructed, are designed to ensure structures can withstand the forces generated by earthquakes. They're a key factor in minimizing damage and ensuring the safety of occupants. Now let's talk about resilience. This is where science comes in. Scientists play a key role in predicting future earthquakes and understanding how they happen. They study tectonic plate movements, monitor seismic activity, and use advanced technology to map fault lines. This ongoing research not only helps predict when and where the next big quake might hit, but also contributes to the development of more earthquake-resistant buildings and infrastructure. Of course, predicting earthquakes is far from an exact science. Earthquakes are complex, unpredictable phenomena, and despite all our knowledge and technology, they still hold many mysteries. That's why research in this field is so important, and why scientists around the world continue to strive for better understanding and prediction methods. So, in the face of such a formidable natural force, what can we do? We can be prepared. We can build resilient communities. We can support scientific research. And we can educate ourselves and others about the risks and how to mitigate them. While we can't prevent earthquakes, we can certainly prepare for them. This is our mantra, our guiding principle. As we navigate a world where the ground beneath our feet isn't always as solid as we'd like it to be, but with readiness and resilience, we can face the future with confidence, knowing we're doing all we can to protect ourselves and our communities.